Soccer Today is brought to you by Passion Soccer Boutique for the love of the beautiful game. Vaudreuil, Laval, Saint-Léonard, and available everywhere at passionsoccer.ca.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee, joined as always by Duane Rollins on the phone today. But as our first guest today to talk about the Gold Cup final, host of the Reggae Boys commentary channel on YouTube, Simon Preston, live from Jamaica. Simon, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you doing? I'm very fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, Simon. We wanted to have someone today that would be both an expert for Jamaica, which is you, and also we have Charles Boehm coming up next to talk about the U.S. So this focus of this one's going to almost entirely be on the Reggae Boys and their tournament here. Back-to-back finals. How is this getting played in Jamaica? Are people excited?
I must say the excitement has not only been on social media as well, but for the general population of Jamaica, there's a real sort of enthusiasm about soccer in Jamaica. I mean, the past couple of years, there was a lot of excitement about track and field and cricket, but I think football is slowly but surely getting back to be the most popular sport. I mean, we've had some rough times as it relates to performances, but these Gold Cup performances has really, you could say, united the nation.
A bit of an appetizer before Usain Bolt does his farewell in London in a week or so. Talk about the disappointment of missing out in the World Cup qualifying. Is this sort of making up for that in people's eyes? Are people excited about the future?
In Jamaica, people are always more excited about a Gold Cup. They would rather qualify for the Gold Cup. Qualify for the World Cup instead of win the Gold Cup. But this, you could say, is like a second best goal for them. Among Jamaicans, actually going and beating the United States in a final on Wednesday would be a dream come true for them, because Jamaica doesn't have the best of records in North American soil or against the US generally. We've only beaten them twice, once in 2012, once in 2015. So there's a lot of hope that they'll be able to get the result. I mean, Andre Blake in goal has been an absolute rock with clean sheets and saves under his belt. So a lot of Jamaicans are expecting big things from him in the final on Wednesday.
Well, you're taking literally the words out of my mouth, Simon. When we're looking at Andre Blake on Sunday and throughout the tournament, and quite frankly, in the last 18 months in North America, he's been, in my opinion, the best goalkeeper across North America. How impressive is Andre Blake, and how big of a deal is he becoming for the Jamaican soccer fans?
Slowly but surely, he's becoming an asset with Jamaicans. You know, he started out in the national team around 2010. He was like the third string goalkeeper. He went to the US for college, and then that was that experience that helped him to develop as one of an elite keeper and to go and actually be drafted number 1 in the MLS. He's improved so much since he left Jamaica. He had some work to be done on his positioning and also his shot stopping ability, and that has increased tenfold. So he's done an absolutely brilliant job where that is concerned, and it takes something special to beating it. And look at that, you know, it took a player born to Jamaican parents to score against him, Junior Hoylett, recently in the quarterfinals. So it's really good to see the progress that he's made.
Yeah, thanks for that one, Simon. Yeah, thanks. But,
You're welcome.
But that's sort of question I was wondering too, because when you're looking at Jamaica's history, the big players they always produce, there was an attacking flair. Usually it's the strikers, attacking midfielders, but the one that we see internationally, and we see the ones that perform in big leagues in the world, are usually the more attacking-minded players for Jamaica. This goalkeeper comes out a bit of left field, being that prominent. Do you think his time away, like you mentioned, is he going to help the future of goalkeepers of Jamaican national team, because his knowledge will be passed down eventually? Is it truly his experience abroad that actually gave him that experience?
Jamaicans generally have produced some good goalkeepers. You just have to look recently at Donovan Ricketts throughout his time with the LA Galaxy in the MLS. And in addition to that, with Montreal and Portland Timbers, even a goalkeeper of the year as well, winning MLS Cups under his belt. So Jamaica generally has produced keepers, Warren Barrett, who played in the World Cup as well. But the issue in the past was that overseas teams didn't really want players, goalkeepers in that position. They would rather have local keepers. But now with globalization, more goalkeepers are getting opportunities abroad. And I think Andre Blake can be a pioneer moving forward for future Jamaican goalies. And I'm quite confident that he can be the man between the sticks for at least another 10 years. I'm just hoping, though, that after a few more years in MLS, then Europe will be next on his agenda.
When you look at both the quarterfinal win over Canada, where they the Canadians did have the bulk of possession, and obviously the Mexico game, same difference. It's been a very, forget Blake for a second, just a very organized Jamaican team, and that's maybe a bit of a change from the past. Is this something that you think that they can maintain and continue through to the American game?
It's something that they can employ, yes. With this new coach that we have, Theodore Whitmore, he's used a different style compared to Winfred Schaefer that we saw 2 years ago, where Jamaica also went to the final of the Gold Cup. Coach Whitmore likes to have local players that work hard defensively and do their best and be ruthless on the counter and get goal-scoring opportunities from that. Yes, you can say it can be predictable, but Jamaica can be quite efficient with it. We've seen it recently in the 2011 Gold Cup as well, where Jamaica went through the entire group stages without conceding and also winning all their games as well, including Honduras, who was one of the best teams in the region at that time. So I believe against the United States that it's something that they can employ. But I must say, with the likes of Clint Dempsey and Josie Altidore back, it's going to be more of a mouth-watering encounter. It's not going to be an easy game.
And before I give it back to Kevin to ask a couple more on Jamaica, I want to take a step and look at the overall tournament for a second, and particularly the issue with Maluda and French Guiana. And I'm wondering what your take and what the take in the Caribbean is about that. Are they on the side of the French Guianans in terms of their positioning here, or is this something that the people seem upset about because of sort of the way that they played the ineligible player on purpose?
Right. I'm sure if you're aware as well, back in the 2007 CONCACAF Gold Cup in Miami in the Rose Bowl, Canada played Guadeloupe, and a 43-year-old player at the time, Jocelyn Anglomo, scored against Canada. And interestingly, he actually played for France previously as well. So I was wondering, with this sort of predicament, well, we've seen French players in the past represent French departments in tournaments, so why is there a big issue about it? But quite recently, CONCACAF has taken FIFA regulations under their belt. So at first, before I knew about this, I was saying, well, why is it that he's not been allowed to play? And others have played in the past. But now knowing that he actually is cap-tied and understanding the circumstances behind French departments and these other nations, then it gives a clear idea. So for me, I can understand, but I think it's quite unfortunate because French Guiana, one, are not a FIFA member, so I don't see any reason with him, Florent Maluda, playing for French Guiana, and two, he was even born in French Guiana, so I don't see the issue of why not he shouldn't play for them. Around the Caribbean, people are disappointed because we don't see a lot of European stars get their opportunity to grace in CONCACAF, so it was an opportunity that we're looking for, and hopefully it would have been more than one game. But overall, I got to see him play in the Caribbean Cup in Martinique recently, so it was nice to see him deck out in the colors of his nation's birth.
One of the best players for Jamaica lately has been Romario Williams. He's a Golden Boot leader in the USL. I am wondering, Simon, how is the coverage of the USL in Jamaica? Did Romario Williams make a name for himself in the last few years in the second division? And is he truly the type of player? Because we all know the Gold Cup is, especially this year, it's like the B Gold Cup. There's no Confederations Cup ticket at the end of the tournament. But how is Romario Williams? Is he really a big piece moving forward for the national team?
He is going to be an asset moving forward. But, interestingly, he started out as a holding midfielder for Jamaica at the under-17 level. He played for Jamaica at the under-17 FIFA World Cup in 2011 in Mexico, and he cemented himself as a holding midfielder. Once he left high school and went to college, he started to play much higher up the field. And as you can see now, he's a forward where he can operate on the left or on the right, center forward when necessary. And he's slowly but surely being not a squad player, but more a first-team player. And for a player that just made his debut less than a year ago, he's made tremendous progress throughout that period of time. So I believe for this 22-year-old, there's a bright future ahead for him.
What is the goal tomorrow night? Yes, winning. Yes, getting that trophy, that Gold Cup, being the fourth ever nation in CONCACAF to raise that trophy. But what are your expectations heading into tomorrow night?
My expectations for tomorrow, aside from winning, is neutralizing the threat of Clint Dempsey and Josie Altidore. I think since they've come in at the quarterfinal stage, that they've given the United States an additional spark moving forward. And in addition to that, with Tim Howard in goal, it's going to be extremely tricky because he still has what it takes, you know. So I think the set pieces are going to be so key. I think throughout this tournament, other than the Kemar Lawrence's free kick against the Mexico in the semifinal, we haven't got many of our set pieces on target. So if we can be disciplined in how we take it and be proactive, then I think for me that will be happy. I would be happy despite the results against the Americans.
But what would it mean to win? What would it mean to Jamaican football if you were to get the win? Would it have a legacy, or would it just be, a good party for a couple nights?
It'd be more than a party, Even our prime minister is tweeting, so everyone is hoping for a public holiday on Thursday. But I must tell you that it would be a memorable moment in Jamaican football, and be up there for like qualification for the 1998 World Cup that we had in France. And even more significant in my eyes as well, we would now go into a playoff for a spot to go into FIFA Confederations Cup in 2019. So for me, I would be looking forward to that if we're able to get one over the United States. So I must say there are a few nerves. However, at the same time, regardless of the results, I am very proud of what this team has accomplished, because coming into this tournament with no English-based players involved, not many people were giving us any chance to even advance past the group stages. So with this local core of players, I think we have done extremely well.
Well, no, obviously you have. Disappointing from the Canadian perspective that we couldn't get past Jamaica in that quarterfinal, but nonetheless, the Jamaicans have impressed in the knockout stage, and their resilience, I think. What is the key in your mind, tactically speaking? I mean, I think we've kind of touched on it, but just to sort of articulate what you think the tactical key is to potentially getting a victory over the United States on Wednesday.
For me, it's the back four. There are times throughout the encounter, especially in the first half throughout the tournament, we've misplaced the three passes from our centre backs. If it's either Damian Lowe or Jermaine Taylor, that is something that they would have to work on together, because they have been quite sloppy in the first half of games. We saw it against Curacao, against Mexico, El Salvador, Canada as well, got us quite early before we scored as well. So if we can start well, then it can really change the complexion of the game, so Jamaicans can have a very good first half, because we haven't had good first halves going into this competition. I think if you're able to start well, then it will breed confidence into the team, and tactically I think that would be the benefit for us.
All right. I think most neutrals will be cheering for Jamaica, because everyone likes to see the underdog, and I think Jamaica is the underdog in this to get the victory here. And obviously Canadian fans can watch this Jamaican team. A lot of these players will be back in September at BMO Field to play Canada in a friendly there. So before I go, one quick more question. I'm always curious about the club situation in the Caribbean. Could you just sort of briefly describe sort of the strength of the current Jamaican league, and whether you think that it would benefit to maybe one day see a pan-Caribbean league that to sort of increase the club football level in the Caribbean?
So the club system in Jamaica, it's no doubt there's raw talent. What I think it needs is more sponsorships and better playing surfaces. In Jamaica, it's called the Red Stripe Premier League, and we have 12 teams in that league. And interestingly, it's not a situation where at the end of the league, the top team wins the league. There's a playoff where the top 4 teams would go into a playoff system, and it would be like a mini semifinals and then final. I believe that if you were to compare the Jamaican league compared to other leagues in the world, it would be on par with like the conference in England, so like the 5th tier of English football. I still think there's so much more work to be done. The fields is one area that I think needs improvement, and I think the club's image needs to be improved as well. So social media, posting starting 11s before games, getting pictures during the games, so that clubs and players can be identified more across North America and Europe, so that they can get more information to to bring them. Statistics is also key as well. And to allude to your second point about the Pan-Caribbean League, so to speak, I like the idea of having that. The only question is, how would we decide which teams? Because in the Caribbean, as you know, there's a ton of teams in each of the different islands. So how would we decide which teams? Do we just say, okay, we're going to pick 3 teams from here, 3 teams from Trinidad, 3 from Barbados, and they say, okay, this is our league? And what happens to the other teams? Do they fall short? Do they dissolve? I still think that there's still a few more legal matters to be dealt with, but I don't think it's something we'd see for another at least 5 to 10 years.
Just before
right,
we say
Simon.
goodbye, I have a question for you, Simon, as well. Simon, when we're looking at the club side, to continue on that front, the CONCACAF Champions League is something that's becoming slowly but surely a tournament that people are getting more interested in. We've seen some great interest in our country with Toronto and Montreal's run over the last few years. I'm wondering, what's your thought on the CONCACAF Champions League and the Jamaican presence of that league?
I'm really excited about this sort of CONCACAF league taking place. This Jamaican club, Portmore United, will be in action next week, Wednesday, against Plaza Amador of Panama. That's very exciting. It's going to be held at the National Stadium, so there's an opportunity for the fans to come out in their numbers. You know, it's a tournament that has given Jamaicans an opportunity to play professionally. You think about the likes of an Omar Daly, a Luton Shelton, as examples, who later went on to grace English and Scottish football. So I believe that Jamaicans need to take it more seriously, because scouts are there, and also these games are televised. So it's an opportunity for them to market themselves to the world. So I'm very happy with this sort of new format being involved, and I think that this, if we're able to get the results against this Panamanian club next week, then it could bode well for the future in the Caribbean.
And to finish off the interview today, Simon, I'm wondering, we don't have a chance to talk to a Jamaican soccer reporter all the time. How is MLS perceived? How is North American perceived in Jamaica? Is it the league that people follow more? Is it the league that even people follow at all? Is it something that interests the football fan in Jamaica and Major League Soccer, North American soccer? Is it something that's getting traction over the last few years?
In Jamaica, the most watched leagues are the usual: the English Premier League, the German Bundesliga, and the Spanish La Liga, also the Serie A. Now, with the MLS and even so the USL leagues, there is not a much in terms of watching on television, but what Jamaicans do a lot is bet on games in the MLS that include Jamaican internationals or in USL as well. So that is where it is in concern. A lot of Jamaicans like example like a Toronto FC, even though there's not Jamaicans on it now, but they like Sebastian Giovinco, how the impact that he has made. And as you know, before him, Toronto FC has not even made the playoffs, and even Tyrone Marshall, a former Jamaican international, was there, Ryan Johnson. So Toronto FC has been a team that a lot of Jamaicans support from the MLS. LA Galaxy is another one, and also Portland Timbers. So you could say those are the 3 main teams a lot of Jamaicans support when they do get an opportunity to follow the league, whether it's online or through betting.
Simon, thank you very much for your time today. Where can the listeners find your work?
Well, they can certainly check me out on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called Reggae Boys Commentary. I do weekly videos on information on Jamaican soccer, not only on the men's side, but also the women's side as well, and youth levels. And I'm also on Twitter as well. It is SimeyP93. That's SIMEY P93. That's me.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your time today. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will be talking to Charles Boehm of 442 USA, amongst many, many other places.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back on Soccer Today, live, brought to you by Passion Soccer Boutique. For the love of the beautiful game, open 24 hours at passionsoccer.ca. Joining us today, always a pleasure, one of my favorite, Charles Boehm. Charles, how are you today?
I am great, even better now that I've got that wonderful news about where I where I stand in your pecking order.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Yeah, Jason Davis still beats you in my mind, Charles. Sorry.
Well, you are always kind of a contrarian, aren't you, Duane?
that is me.
That's a
You
good
can
word
read
for
me
it.
defending him. You can read me defending Amaro Cooper in my column I wrote for Vocal Minority today. So that's the contrarian in me coming out there. People want to hang here in Toronto today, but no, that's not talking about MLS today. The Gold Cup final on Wednesday, Charles. The Americans were supposed to be there. The Jamaicans were not. Is there a little bit of disappointment that you don't get to meet the old rival in the final?
Well, there's certainly disappointment in CONCACAF headquarters. I'm sure they've lost a great deal of money thanks to Sunday's result, and I think that's probably the case. American fans on Sunday evening, I think, had conflicting feelings of Schadenfreude at watching Mexico stumble short of the final, combined with a little bit of probably a little bit of sadness to not get to have the big showdown that everybody wants. So, pros and cons, but I think. On balance, it's probably fitting considering what an underwhelming tournament this has been in every way. And let's give some credit to the Jamaicans. They've more than earned their spot, and so it's easy to overlook that in all the talk of the Giants. I think they're a deserving underdog.
I think it's interesting you call it an underwhelming tournament. Of course, we in Canada are our quarterfinal, our noble loss in the quarterfinals is making us very excited up here. So we kind of have a different perspective. But what sort of to summarize that a little bit more? You're in the final, the U.S. Of course, you expect to get there. But what has been so disappointing to so many Americans about the play in this tournament?
Well, it's this tournament should happen every 4 years, right? I think that's probably the most concise way to sum it up. But it doesn't. It happens every 2 years, and inevitably that has a knock-on effect. And in this case, this is the cycle. The year before a World Cup, this late in the World Cup cycle, everyone's got their mind on something else, or at least most everyone. The U.S. has used this tournament predominantly as a tryout to get a sense of where the players a little further down the depth chart stand, and see if anybody can make a case for rising into a more prominent spot in the player pool. Bruce Arena, to his credit, was upfront about that. The only thing he's done that kind of, I think, contrasts that a little bit was calling in 6 reinforcements from the core of the roster. Although at this point, they've been influential, and you have to say it's worked. If you want to and win a trophy, that's the track that Arena has the U.S. on. But the team has I think statistically been the best team in the tournament, but it never has really felt that way. They've struggled at times against inferior opposition. Some individuals, I think, have made a decent case for bigger roles, but as a whole, it hasn't been the inspiring show of strength that you might have hoped or expected as a U.S. fan.
Now, when we're looking at Clint Dempsey, last game that he played in the quarterfinals, he scored his 57th goal for the national team, tying Landon Donovan. And a beautiful goal it was, off a free kick, surprised Costa Rica, especially the wall that maybe moved and shouldn't have, but it's not the point. It's a great moment for Clint Dempsey. Is it tomorrow night, the night where he surpasses Landon Donovan, or is the result of the game even more important of Clint Dempsey maybe winning a trophy clinching goal to even surpass Landon Donovan? Like, who writes this?
Yeah, it's. I think he's going to be influential one way or another. Dempsey's in a really interesting spot in his career, his international career, because Arena has not hidden the fact that he may be moving into kind of a super sub role. That's certainly what he did in the semifinal against Costa Rica. Dempsey's kind of gotten to be a little bit maybe less rangy player and more of a crafty guy who uses his brain. And he was never, the fleetest of foot, but now we're seeing his impact seems to be most noticeable in small doses where he can come on and change the game off the bench. I have a feeling that's what we'll see him do in the World Cup next summer, assuming that the U.S. hold serve and stay on course for Russia. I think he probably would like to be starting every game, and the productivity may suggest that he's earned that opportunity. But the way this team plays at the moment, he's the inspiration. They've really lacked for that sort of craftiness in the attack, someone who can unlock a packed defense. And Dempsey is he has an eye for the occasion. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see him move past Donovan on the all-time scoring charts with something impactful tomorrow night. And he's had some good games in the past against Jamaica. It's only a matter of time on that record. But we'll see if it happens. But I have a feeling, Dempsey's going to be an influential person, even if he's not playing 90 minutes over the next year and maybe even longer. Will he retire after World Cup? Will he keep on going? Can he keep this going? He's one of my favorite types of stories in this game, which is out of an individual who finds a way to adapt his game, whose brain compensates for aging legs. And so with that in mind, he's one of the smartest and most technical players the U.S. has ever produced. I'm nowhere near ready to write Clint Dempsey off.
When we're looking at Bruce Arena's tenure in this Gold Cup, with the roster selection, with everyone, is there anything that surprised you? Is the presence of the final maybe erasing some criticism that were present in the group stage? And are you impressed by any players or one player in particular, Charles, in this Gold Cup so far?
You mean in terms of the U.S. or in general as a tournament?
US. Yeah, the U.S. first. Well, if there's somebody else where it actually impressed you more, go for it. But yes.
Well, I think some of the I'll start by saying, let's again give Jamaica credit. Very organized team, some players who stepped up and maybe made a big impact on their own careers, especially the MLS guys on the Jamaican side. There's been some big moments and some impressive performances, both individually and collectively there. But from a U.S. standpoint, I was most impressed by the guys that Bruce sent home early. I thought Cullen Rowe and Dom Dwyer were two of the most noticeable, useful players in the group stage, and neither one of them made the cut. They were both replaced by the veterans coming in, which is a real disappointment to me. But I understand what Bruce is trying to do. I think Rowe is one of the most technical players in the U.S. pool. I think we definitely need more of that type of player. He's so versatile. He's so good with both feet. He's so intelligent tactically. I would like to see a much bigger role for Cullen Rowe in the months and years ahead. But the fact that he was sent home suggests that he maybe didn't quite do enough to turn Bruce's head. We'll see what happens in the years ahead, or the months to come, whether he gets into the picture in time for the World Cup. And then Dwyer is a great story, of course. I think we've talked about him before. He scored goals. He did what was expected of him. Considering he's new to the international level, I thought he made a pretty good impression, and I would expect we'll see more from him. Again, it's just a question of whether it's in time for him to be in the picture for Russia.
It is timely. I said I wasn't going to ask about MLS, but I can't help myself now. You just mentioned Dom Dwyer. Is he really getting traded to Orlando? And what is Kansas doing if that's the case?
Yeah, it's a baffling situation, isn't it? I think I understand the Orlando interest. Now, MLS watchers will remember he sort of broke through it and became a star player by virtue of a loan stint at Orlando when they were in USL. He couldn't break into KC's side as a younger player, found his confidence, scored a ridiculous number of goals in USL, helped them win a championship a few years ago, and that propelled him into MLS stardom. Orlando seems to have maybe never really lost their desire for him from that point on. They've tried repeatedly to acquire him in trades. KC has always rebuffed it. And you have to remember, too, Dwyer spent time playing college ball down there in Florida, so that he's a familiar face to the folks down there. I understand it from Orlando's point of view. We all know that your boy Kyle Larin, it's just a matter of time before he goes to Europe. I thought they'd stick out the season with Larin, and if Orlando sell him after the season, there's a bigger payoff for them based on the convoluted ways in which MLS decides who gets what cut of a transfer fee. But it's possible that off-field events may have accelerated that, or maybe there's things in the works there, and they see Dwyer as the most ready-made solution. I don't necessarily see an easy fix for KC. I'm really surprised, because this is a team that looks like it could go on and contend for trophies. I mean, they're still in the mix for multiple trophies right now. They've got the U.S. Open Cup, which they'll host the final if they advance. They're at the semifinal stage now, and then this is a quite possibly the best defense statistically in MLS history. So with all that being said, why are you going to ship off one of your most reliable finishers? That said, he's not been finishing at the rate at which we would expect from him in MLS play. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But hey, this is the window, right? The window is open, and KC has been pretty crafty on the international market. Maybe they've got something in line there. Maybe they think Daniel Saloy, or the young homegrown Hungarian kid they've got, is ready to step up, or maybe someone like that. So one to watch for sure.
They were talking about a three-way trade with Kai Kamara. It's bizarre to me. Anyway, let's get back to the Gold Cup. You were talking about Bruce Arena and his remarkable start. Every win he gets, does that make Klinsmann look even worse?
I think that's unfair. I think, and I've written about this before, I think it's unfair and inaccurate for people to compare these two managers. Well, inevitably, we are comparing late era Klinsmann to early on stage of Bruce Arena's second stint, and the game states, the ground rules are so different for these two managers. I think it's natural to do that, but they're just in different positions. They have different tasks. Klinsmann, for all his foibles, and he was inconsistent, erratic, and frustrating in a lot of ways, but he was given such a different mission, and I think handing him the technical director's job and actually expecting him to do something with it at the same time he was running the senior squad was just unrealistic and unfair. Maybe in the end, just a justification for his enormous pay packet. But whether it was or not, none of it made sense, and it didn't help any kind of ability to judge him both internally and externally. And for Bruce, the mission is very simple and very clear. Right the ship, get this team to Russia, and get the best performance you can out of them in Russia next summer. So Arena's doing that. He's not always put out a team that's produced the most impressive soccer, but again, he doesn't have to do that. That's not part of his mission. Whereas Klinsmann was expected to transform this program and in a way the whole sport in this country, this enormous, messy country. And that's just ridiculously impossible now in retrospect. Perhaps we could have seen it at the time, but it's definitely clear now.
Looking at their opponent, Jamaica, what does the U.S. need to do, in your opinion, Charles, to make sure that tomorrow night they raise that Golden Cup?
Well, Jamaica's been very organized. They've kept men behind the ball. They try to break out with their speed, and they can get at you on the counter. They have athletes. They have speed. They have some guys who can finish. They haven't scored a lot of goals, but they scored when they needed to. Players like Darren Maddox, who I'm sure will be very motivated. He's a longtime MLS player, someone who's sort of using this tournament to resuscitate his own career. And then some of the other guys they have, they've just had guys step up at prime moments. For the U.S., the task here, I think, is unlocking a packed defense, and it's been a challenge in the past. They haven't always done well. Panama, I think, probably gave Jamaica a little bit of a blueprint in the opening game of the tournament for stifling the U.S. So, I think it's going to be on Josie Altidore to draw defenders, to pull that back four out of shape, to make Jamaica have to make tough decisions in and around the box at speed. I'm interested to see if the U.S. Have sort of a pure number 10, where they have someone like, and I think Dempsey will probably come off the bench, but it's possible that he or someone like him will get the start to try and make those clever passes. And Darlington Nagbe is another one to watch here. The U.S. I'm sure will dominate possession, but what do they do with it? How do they open up that back four? And then when it comes down to it, you've got to pick your spot well against Andre Blake. I don't think there's many goalkeepers on earth who are playing as well as he is. Even when that defense gets broken down, Blake makes great saves. He makes good decisions. He commands his penalty box. So for the U.S., I think it's a question of intelligence and execution in and around the penalty box.
Now, the tournament is wrapping up tomorrow. We've talked about the game. We've talked about both sides. We haven't really talked about Mexico because they lost against Jamaica. But how surprised were you on Sunday when that free kick from Kemar Lawrence found its way in the back of the net? And how terrible did Mexico play in this Gold Cup? I think the way the keeper reacted to that free kick is the entire tournament in a nutshell for Mexico.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Corona, that goalkeeper had bailed this team out a couple of times. They're doing much the same approach as the U.S. There's a lot of fringe players. They had to choose. They had to sort of build a big roster and then split it between Confederations Cup and Gold Cup. And Osorio, for better and for worse, is a tinkerer. He rotates his squad. He throws out multiple tactical looks in a given tournament. He was evaluating players, and maybe he'll feel like he's seen the lessons that he needed to see, even if it wasn't what he and the fans wanted to see. But at the end of the day, you still expect him to reach the final, and it's still a tremendous disappointment and underachievement. And the fans, who I think are used to this culture of short triggers and canning the coach quickly, churning through coaches. I mean, the numbers on the amount of coaching turnover in both Liga MX at the club level and at the national team level in Mexico is really startling. It's to an excess, but it's deeply sort of woven into that culture. They're trying to respect the process right now, and have faith in Osorio as someone who can be an antidote to that itchy trigger finger syndrome. But a result as embarrassing as Sundays, I think there's probably some people up high in FMF, the federation down there, who are looking at that panic button, and thinking long and hard about it. So, but a lot of experts I trust think that he's going to be given an opportunity. His overall record is very good. I think they have seen some benefits from an emphasis on stability. But the old ways die hard, and the fans were chanting "Fuera Osorio" on his way out of the stadium. So if that seat wasn't roasting hot before, it certainly is now.
Fair enough. The Philadelphia 76ers have done a lot wrong in the world, but I think respect the process is the worst thing that franchise has ever done. At any rate.
It has a little more of a rhythmic lilt to it in Spanish, though. Proceso is a little bit nicer.
It does sound a little bit better, yeah. I don't think the 76ers fans are going to respect the process when it's all said and done. But that's just me as a Raptors fan talking, and this isn't a basketball podcast. Charles, let's get back on track. Not TFC's rival fans like to call TFC Team USA up here, and they do so, I don't think, completely as a compliment. Is it possible that there might be a third player consistently getting called up to the Americans after Justin Morrow's performance in this tournament, or is this kind of a one-off look?
I certainly hope so. I think he's a great tournament player for this squad at this moment. There is competition. Eric Lehigh and Jorge Villafaña are both some other fullback options that have made good cases for themselves of late, both in this tournament and in recent qualifiers. But Morrow is he's just so versatile. He can play on either side. He can sit in and defend. I think his time at center back with TFC has probably helped him a lot in terms of having that that view of things, that ability to sit home and defend, or to race forward and get into the attack. I think he's a very useful player, and he might yet turn out to be one of those players who got the timing right and made that sort of late run onto the World Cup squad. Much will depend on the number of opportunities that Bruce gives him to impress. He has to. I'm sure Arena will want a bigger sample size of international play before he pulls the trigger on that decision. So hopefully he'll get called into the qualifiers later this year. But in terms of the abilities he's got, the skill set he's got, it's right on point. And I think he's represented himself well. He hasn't necessarily been spectacular in the Gold Cup, but he's a useful piece as someone who can fill so many roles for you in a tournament environment.
Fair enough. To continue on the TFC vein, as always, there's debate about Josie All-Star and what his overall performance is. I personally think, and said in the last show, that this might be his best combined club and country season in a while. What is your take on Altidor's form right now?
Yeah, he's such a such an enigma for so much of his career, and I think he inspires strong emotions, in both positively and negatively, for a range of reasons here in the United States, at least. But it's I think so, and a big part of it is just health. He's had those chronic hamstring issues. Usually he's built campaigns like this before, but by this point he's had a setback that's interrupted his rhythm. And so far, maybe the new methods that they're trying to keep him fit and keep him from re-aggravating those old injuries have worked. I certainly hope that it continues for him, because what's key for Altidore is rhythm, sharpness, and confidence, both in himself and those around him. And that all seems to be working at the moment. And I think it's when those things are disrupted, it's easy to blame him. But everything seems to be working in his favor at the moment, and both his club and country are setting him up to succeed. So I think I would agree with your take on it. And I'm sure he himself would say he'd rather be judged at the business end of the season with the ambitions that TFC have. But he's been very good, and he's been a linchpin. He makes so many things work for the U.S. in terms of the players he brings into the game, the space he creates for teammates in the attack. So good stuff for Josie, and he may yet be one of those guys who turns out to pop up and play the hero tomorrow.
Fair enough. Finally, I guess we'd be remiss in Canada and all to not ask you what your take on the Canadian national team's performance in the Gold Cup was. We're excited by the youth and sort of a more progressive look, the way that they put themselves out there. But from an outsider's perspective, what was your take on Canada's play this tournament?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I was surprised that they couldn't find a way past Jamaica. I think you have to be disappointed with that. All things considered, I thought Jamaica were there for the taking in that match. Jamaica have generally, as I said, been an organized squad, and they were less so against Canada, and kind of got away with it. But it's tough, the task for Zambrano is to change, not only to evaluate players, to get in the right talents in the right spots, but to change the culture. And many have tried and failed to do that over the years. Can we say over the decades? But he's, there is talent up there. And when results don't go well for you as a team, especially with the fans that are up there, the devotion and the frustration, it's easy to sort of write off a whole generation or multiple generations of players. But you've got the ability there. You got to harness it, get it moving in the right direction with systems that work, and then let things take shape. It's frustrating, I'm sure, to have to look so far ahead to find meaningful matches on the calendar, but I think the building blocks are in place, and you have to respect Zambrano for encouraging the attack, letting players be expressive. I hope he gives some bigger roles to some of the fringe guys. I mean, I think players like Tybert. There's other guys, and we'll of course talk about Alphonso Davies, but there's guys a little bit older than him, I think, who still have some things to offer. And now the question is, will he get the schedule good friendlies? Can he get his team playing together, spending time together, so that they can have momentum when the next qualifying cycle begins? But I think Canadian fans have much to look forward to.
And this League of Nations thing has us very intrigued up here for that friendly issue. Charles, quickly, give us a percentage. What percentage of an chance is there that there is an upset tomorrow night and that Jamaica is standing in the confetti?
I give it probably more so than others would. I'd say I'll go with 75-25, maybe even 60-40, because the U.S. has traditionally dominated Jamaica, but this Jamaican team has something different about them. They've got a real unity, a real collective bond, and it's a tough matchup for the U.S. in the sense of, again, being a packed defense that will force them to be inventive in the final third. So I don't know that this is necessarily a great matchup for the U.S. despite sort of the past history of dominance. So I'll say, like I said, I'll say 75-25.
All right. Anything you want to promote before we say goodbye?
No, folks can check me out on Twitter. That's usually where my latest work pops up. CBOEHM at CBOEHM.
All right. Thanks, Charles.
Cheers, gents.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, Five Rings Daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. And we're back on Soccer Today, presented by Passion Soccer Boutique. for the love of the beautiful game. And Duane, this store is probably the best soccer store I've ever been to. From culture, lifestyle to gear, go to passionsoccer.ca.
And you said they'll ship all over Canada, right?
Exactly. So, and if you're a soccer association, soccer club, need some gear, some jerseys, some kit, all across Canada, there's team repping Passion Soccer Boutique, and you can do the same. passionsoccer.ca.
All right, fair enough. We'll go check that out later. I wonder if they have any kits, the new kits out there for us to explore, because it's getting close to the European season for us to start sporting those colors again, Kevin. But that's
Wait, I like not to belabor this, but they have like Montreal Menix jersey. So basically, whatever you think you can want, they have it, and in multiple sizes.
all right. That sounds pretty exciting. Montreal Menix jerseys. Oh, and I might have to go check that out the next time I'm in Montreal. They have a physical location as well in Montreal. Do you know what the address is off top?
Well, the one in Vaudreuil, one in Laval, and one in Saint Leonard. 3 brick and mortar store, as we can say now in today's world.
All right, but what matters is that click, click, click. Anywhere in the country you can get that, and that would be good. So we thank them for their support of the show, and we'll move on now, though. Look, we can't ignore yesterday's bomb that was thrown into MLS circles, into the Pro Rel folks, because it's their crowned, champion, decided to offer, apparently, a report came out, $4 billion for the MLS media rights. So this is over 10 years, so it works out to about $400 million,
but
40 million.
You know what I thought? $4 billion doesn't get you what I thought it was getting you. Like, we've seen the UFC bought for $4 billion, and it's like it's a shamble. It's a terrible, terrible business deal on the guy who purchased it. And $4 billion for 10-year rights of MLS, and the caveat of having Pro Rel, I think it's a terrible business proposition either way.
Yeah, look, the math doesn't work out. I know, look, the Pro Rel folks, they are like dogs with a bone when you give them something like this. And I'm being dismissive when I say this, because there's about 1,000 of them probably in the world. They do not listen to any contrarian evidence whatsoever. They just believe that their position is absolute. And this was their Christmas day yesterday, and they refused to listen to logic and refused to understand the pure economics of what this is. First off, MLS can't accept the offer because they're contractually connected to ESPN for, I think, 3 more years off the top of my head. I'm not sure exactly when that runs out, but for a while anyway. They can't open this up till 2020 or something like that. So they know damn well that you can't accept this offer off the top of the, off of the, when they put it on the table. What it is them trying to garner more support for their cause, and they believe that they need to open up the system to promotion and relegation. If you want to see me break down all of my arguments, I did it on Twitter yesterday on 2 separate strings, which sort of explains at least my perspective, and this is my perspective from talking to lots of people that know what they're talking about, of why it's next to impossible to implement promotion and relegation without a complete buy-in by every owner currently in Major League Soccer. That's the only way it could possibly happen. And if you were an owner in Major League Soccer, would you just throw the keys on the table and go, take the value of my franchise and cut it in half because I'm putting myself up to the potential of being relegated? Come on, man, you wouldn't. I mean, that's just not how economics works. It doesn't make sense. And this $4 billion is just a drop in the bucket. It would cost you, likely, if you wanted to force an implicating promotion and relegation, it would cost you a lot more than $4 billion. The only way this would even make a bit of sense, and I spoke on Twitter briefly with an economics guy yesterday about this, would be with this was actually a merger, like if an acquisition, like if someone actually said, we're going to give you $4 billion today up front for this, and you pay everyone out, and then you own it. That's the only way it would make sense.
And even then, if you add everything together, I don't think MLS and its an entirety is $4 billion. I think it might be close to 2, maybe 3. But pragmatically speaking, $4 billion is a lot of money. Like, it's a lot of money. And yes, if you're looking at recent purchases and market value compared to others, MLS might be quote unquote worth more. But still, like, it's not viable business transaction when you're talking about $4 billion. And what do they have to do to, like, it doesn't make sense. And I think you're right. I think it's the goal yesterday was not to have like that's why Ricardo Silva was seen at MLS's quarter probably last week is for those reasons. Like, probably to present this offer and was probably like, "Are you serious? Like, come on, what's this? What are you trying to do here?"
And he's trying to force his way in some way or whatsoever. I mean, there could be an in play selfishly about getting Miami FC as the, as opposed to whatever the Beckham group is and whatever the hell's happening in Miami, and who knows. That might have been part of it too, but who knows? Look, we could we have in the past sort of laid out potential ways that promotion and relegation could work within North American soccer. We've talked about it in Canadian Premier League before. If you want to search through our archives, God knows we have enough of those out there. It take you a while to find it probably, but needle in the haystack, but we have talked about it before. We're not going to repeat it today. As I said, I laid it out sort of on my Twitter yesterday. If you really want to drag through that, that'd be probably a little quicker than you going through, 14 months of daily programming to try and find it. But I know we talked about it before. Let's move on from it, though, Kevin, unless you have any final thoughts.
Well, no, just one thing I wanted to make sure I talk about is tomorrow night on TSN, 30 for 30, this one on George Best. It aired on ESPN last week, and it's airing in Canada on TSN tomorrow night on Wednesday. And if you don't know George Best's story, well, it's going to be very interesting to you. England's superstar in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And he was playing in San Francisco in the NASL back then too, and went off the rails, drinking problems, drug addiction problems, and lifestyle problems. And at that time, it wasn't talked about like today, but if it was happening today, we would be talking about a mental health problem. So George Best's story tomorrow night on 30 for 30 TSN. I suggest you program your DVR and you make sure you watch because it's a very good one.
Yeah, well, no, he drank his talents away, basically. I mean, he's still immensely talented, but I'm too young to remember his playing career, really. But from what I understand from talking to people older than me, that this was a guy that at the peak of his powers was maybe the best player in the world, probably the best player in the world, and tested away, basically. So, hey, that's something, a lesson that we always can learn. Let's turn our attention to end the show real quickly to our thoughts on the final tomorrow. And we will be off tomorrow, actually. Kevin is celebrating a personal thing tomorrow, so we'll not be on the air, but we will be in the air to wrap the show up on Thursday, obviously.
Exactly, celebrating a special day with the missus, but so tomorrow night, tomorrow during the day, I'm actually out of town, so unfortunately it's not possible, but we'll be back Thursday, but yes, up to you.
All right, so that's what I asked Charles what percentage of an upset potential you thought was there. So I'll ask you the same question, and then I'll give my opinion. So what do you think the percentage chance of the upset is tomorrow?
They need to replicate what they did against Mexico. Give them a chance to win late in the game. It took 80th minute for them to find one opportunity off a free kick that was well hit, well kicked by Lawrence. But come on, what was Corona doing? Half stepping towards it, then stopping and just watching it? What are you doing? You know it's coming your way. You know it's coming on frame. Why are you stopping? You would have got to it. It wasn't hit that hard. It was just placed there. What were you doing, Corona? But yeah, so that's what they have to do. If Jamaica finds a way to give themselves an opportunity late in the game and keep it 1-1 or 0-0, maybe. But I do feel, of course, the home field advantage. USA playing a final at home, like always in the Gold Cup, and having a positive tournament, positive stint under Bruce Arena. I think it's going to come to a trophy raising moment tomorrow night once again for Michael Bradley. He's kind of on a run. Should take out the MLS Cup final, Eastern Conference, Voyageurs Cup, and tomorrow night the Gold Cup.
He does have a lot of practice at raising the cup, and Toronto FC fans will hope they'll get to do 2 more this year, but that's for later on in our shows. In terms of what I think, I'm actually going to, if I put it in percentage terms, I'm actually going to give it a little bit more narrow of a percentage term than even Charles gave it. I'll say 55-45. I actually think Jamaica has a decent chance to pull the upset here because it's the B Gold Cup, because of the way that they've been playing throughout this tournament, so defensively solid. They, I think, are going to give themselves a chance. Now, I'm still giving the 55 to the U.S., and I still wouldn't be willing to put any money on Jamaica winning this thing. But But I do think there is a chance of an upset, and I think that an upset would be good for the tournament. It would add a little bit of relevance to it. Now, instantly, the American and Mexican fans would just dismiss it because it's the B Gold Cup, and there's something to that. But at the same time, as Simon said, it would be massive for Jamaica, and I think it would be really good for the region as a whole. So, I'm inclined to. I'm not against the U.S. The U.S. national soccer teams. I don't necessarily cheer against them, but I don't cheer for them either. So I have no problem tomorrow putting my my support behind the underdog.
All right. And you can follow Duane on Twitter to make sure you catch of all his reaction during the game tomorrow at 24th minute, and myself at Kev Laramee. You can follow the show at Soccer Today SPN and the network at SportsPodNet. You can find every on-demand version of the show at sportspodcastingnetwork.com, on iTunes, Feedburner, Google Play Store, anywhere you get your podcasts. Just look for the Sports Podcasting Network. We're off tomorrow, back Thursday, and until then, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com. Soccer Today was brought to you by Passion Soccer Boutique. Visit us at passionsoccer.ca.